The day my grandmother's will was read, my father tried to blackmail me into paying my sister's rent. He dangled my inheritance like a leash and told me I'd get nothing unless I covered her lifestyle. Then he called 52 times in a single day. What he didn't know was that my grandmother had outsmarted him from the grave. She left everything directly to me, and he never saw it coming. I'm the granddaughter she always called when no one else was listening. My father spent years treating me like a backup plan while my sister got everything. My grandmother saw it all. She watched him buy my sister a car while I took the bus. She heard the phone calls where he demanded I drop everything for them, so she rewrote her will and never told a soul. That document became my shield. But to understand why she trusted me with everything, you have to understand how I learned to survive before she was gone. I grew up in a house where love was measured in what you got. My sister's room had a princess bed, a vanity with a lighted mirror, and a closet that spilled onto the floor. My room was the attic bedroom with a slanted ceiling, a single window, and a bed that groaned when I rolled over. My father said I didn't need much because I was the practical one. I learned that word early. Practical meant you got the hand-me-downs and the bus schedule and the quiet expectation to be grateful. My grandmother lived 3 blocks away in a small house with a porch swing and a garden she tended like a sanctuary. She was the only person who ever asked me what I actually wanted. Not what I was supposed to want, not what would make things easier for everyone else. What I wanted. When I told her I wanted to be a writer, she didn't tell me to be realistic. She bought me a journal with a leather cover and said, "Fill this, then show me." She watched the way my father introduced me at family gatherings, if he introduced me at all. She saw me set the table while my sister posed for photos. She noticed that my birthday dinners were always at home, while my sisters were at restaurants with balloons and a cake that had her name written in frosting. My grandmother never said anything directly, but she started leaving small things at my bedroom door when my parents weren't looking. A $20 bill tucked into a book. A bag of groceries when she knew the fridge was empty. A note that just said, "Keep going." When I was 12, my sister got a brand new bike for Christmas. I got a $5 gift card to a bookstore, which my father handed me with a wink and said, "You like reading, right?" My grandmother came to me later that night and pressed a small envelope into my hand. Inside was a savings bond for $500 and a note that said, "This is for your future. Don't tell anyone." I still have that envelope. By the time I was 15, I had 3 jobs: babysitting on weekends, mowing lawns in the summer, and helping at a local bakery before school. My father never asked how I paid for my own clothes. He just said I was resourceful, like it was a character trait he could take credit for. My sister got an allowance that didn't require any work. She spent it on makeup and concert tickets and outfits she wore once. I saved every dollar. High school was a study in parallel universes. My sister was a cheerleader, the one with the loudest group of friends, the one whose name appeared in the yearbook under most likely to be famous. I was in the newspaper club and the debate team. I won a regional writing competition senior year. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. My grandmother did. She sat in the 3rd row, and when my name was called, she stood up and clapped louder than anyone. That night, she told me something I carry to this day. She said, "You are not the shadow, you are the one casting it. Don't let them convince you otherwise." College was not a conversation. It was a statement I made to my father one night at dinner. "I'm applying." He looked up from his plate and said, "We can't afford it." Then he turned back to his food. My sister had already been promised full tuition at a private university. I didn't bother arguing. I applied for scholarships, federal aid, and every grant I could find. When the acceptance letters came, I showed only my grandmother. She smiled and said, "I knew it." The summer before I left, my grandmother's health started to decline. She had a stroke that took the strength from her left side. I visited her every day in the rehabilitation center. I read to her from newspapers and her old gardening books. She would squeeze my hand when she couldn't find words. One afternoon, with her voice thin and tired, she said, "You're the one who never needed anything from me. That's why I'm giving you everything." At the time, I thought she meant her advice. I didn't understand. My freshman year was a blur of work-study shifts and library nights. My grandmother sent me a letter every month, always in her shaky handwriting, always with a $20 bill inside. She wrote about her roses, the neighbor's cat, the weather. She never complained. I called her every Sunday. She would say, "Tell me something you learned this week." And I would. Those phone calls were my anchor. Sophomore year, she had another stroke. This time, she didn't recover. I took a bus home in the middle of finals week. My father met me at the door and said, "She's gone." He said it like he was delivering a weather report. There was no grief in his voice, just a flat announcement. My sister was already on the phone with a friend, laughing about something. I walked to my grandmother's house, let myself in with the key she had given me, and sat on her porch swing for 3 hours. The funeral was small. My father made a speech about what a wonderful mother-in-law she had been. He didn't mention the bond she had with me. He didn't mention the letters or the savings bonds or the times she had defended me in quiet conversations I overheard. I didn't expect him to. After the service, my father pulled me aside. He said, "Your grandmother had a house and some savings. It's not much, but it should help the family. Your sister could use a down payment on a place. I'll figure out the details." He said it as if the decision was already made, as if I had no say. 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I didn't know, a woman named Margaret Chen. She said she represented my grandmother's estate. She asked if I could come to her office the following week. She said my grandmother had left specific instructions and they needed to be read in person. I didn't tell my father about the call. Something in the lawyer's voice made me keep it to myself. The next morning, my father showed up at my apartment. He had a folder. He said he had found an unsigned version of my grandmother's will in her desk. He said I would need to help my sister's rent until the estate was settled. He said it was only fair, considering everything the family had done for me. He thought he had control. He thought I still needed him. He had no idea what my grandmother had done, and I was about to find out. I sat in my car outside Margaret Chen's office for 5 minutes before I went in. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else. The feeling that a door was about to open and I had no idea what was on the other side. Her office was small. Bookshelves lined the wall, stacked with legal binders and family law texts. She was in her 60s, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain, eyes that had seen enough drama to never be surprised. She offered me water. I declined. She opened a thick brown folder and said, "Your grandmother came to me 2 years before she passed. She wanted to make sure her estate was handled exactly as she specified. She was very clear about her intentions." I said, "My father told me there was a will. He said it left everything to the family." Margaret Chen paused. She slid a document across the desk toward me. "That may be what he found, but this is the will she signed and notarized in my office. It supersedes any unsigned draft." I looked at the paper, my grandmother's signature, her full name in careful cursive, and below it, a single sentence that changed everything. "I leave my entire estate, including my home, all financial accounts, and personal property, to my granddaughter, unconditionally, directly. I expressly bypass my son and any other descendants. She is not required to share, distribute, or account to anyone for what she receives. No conditions, no loopholes, no requirement to help my sister, no mention of my father at all except to cut him out." Margaret Chen explained the details. The house was paid off. It was worth about $240,000. There was a savings account with $47,000. There were also stocks my grandmother had held for 30 years, worth about $60,000. And there was a life insurance policy with me named as the sole beneficiary for $100,000. Total, without even selling the house, I was looking at over $200,000. If I sold the house, almost $500,000. My grandmother, who lived in a small house with a porch swing and grew roses, had been quietly building this for years. She had told no one. Not her son, not her daughter-in-law, not even me. Margaret Chen said, "There's something else. She left you a letter. She instructed me to give it to you in person." She handed me a cream-colored envelope with my name written in that shaky handwriting I knew so well. I opened it right there in her office. It read, "My dearest, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably scared. Don't be. I spent my whole life watching you carry weight that was never yours to carry. I watched you work for everything while others got it handed to them. I watched you ask for nothing and give everything. This is not a gift. This is a correction. Your father took from you in ways he will never understand. He stole your confidence, your time, your peace of mind. He made you believe you were less. You never were. This house is where I raised him. I failed him in ways I can't undo. But I did not fail you. You were the best thing I ever did, and I will not let him take one more thing from you. Take this. Use it to build a life where no one can ever make you feel small again. Do not let them guilt you. Do not let them manipulate you. You owe them nothing. I love you. I am so proud of you, and I will be watching from wherever I am. Your grandmother. I read it twice. The second time I started crying, not sad crying, the kind where you finally realize someone saw you, someone really saw you. Margaret Chen waited. She handed me a box of tissues and said, I've been practicing law for 34 years. I've never seen a will structured quite like this. Your grandmother wanted to make absolutely sure no one could challenge it. She had me include a no contest clause. If anyone tries to dispute the will in court, they forfeit any claim to anything, even if they had a valid claim otherwise. She knew your father would try. I asked, does he know yet? She said, no, the will is filed with the probate court. He will be notified formally by mail. But I would suggest you tell him yourself before he hears it from someone else. I walked out of that office with a folder that contained my future. I drove home in a daze. My phone buzzed. My father. I let it go to voicemail. The message said, I need the keys to your grandmother's house. I have a realtor coming tomorrow. Call me. I didn't call. The next morning, my father showed up at my apartment door. I hadn't given him the address, but he had found it anyway. That told me he had been looking. He was already planning something. He said, I need you to sign some papers, just a formality, to release the estate to me so I can handle everything. I said, I'm not signing anything. He laughed, not a friendly laugh. The kind of laugh that says, you're being ridiculous, and I'm going to make you feel stupid until you do what I want. He said, you think you have a choice? You're 22 years old. You have no money, you have no power here. This is family business. Let the adults handle it. I said, I met with a lawyer yesterday. His face changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. He said, what lawyer? I said, Margaret Chen, grandmother's lawyer. She showed me the real will. Silence. Then he said, I don't know what she told you, but I have a will. I found it in the desk. That's the legal one. I said, no, that's an unsigned draft. The signed and notarized will is filed with the court. She left everything to me, directly. She bypassed you entirely. He stared at me, his jaw tightened. Then he said, you're lying. I opened my folder and showed him the copy Margaret Chen had given me. I pointed to my grandmother's signature. I pointed to the sentence that read, I expressly bypass my son. He read it, then he read it again. Then he looked at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before, pure, unfiltered rage. He said, this is a forgery. That old woman was senile. She didn't know what she was doing. I said, she was not senile. She was sharp until the end, and she knew exactly what she was doing. He stepped closer. You will not get away with this. I will take this to court. I will destroy that will. I will make sure you get nothing. You hear me? Nothing. I said, the will has a no contest clause. If you challenge it and lose, you forfeit everything, including whatever she might have left you in a previous version. She thought of everything. He didn't have a response. He turned and walked out. He slammed the door so hard the frame shook. I stood there, breathing, holding the folder. That was the beginning. The phone calls started an hour later. First one, then another, over and over. 52 times in a single day. Each call left a voicemail. Some were threats. Some were guilt trips. Some pretended nothing had happened, like he was just calling to chat. The messages blurred together. Call me back. You're making a huge mistake. I'm your father. You owe me respect. Your sister is going to lose her apartment. Is that what you want? I'm not going to ask again. You think you're so smart. You're nothing. I love you, honey. Let's talk about this like adults. And then, near the end of the day, the last message. He said, if you don't cooperate, I will make your life a living hell. I have ways. You don't know what I'm capable of. I didn't call back. Instead, I called Margaret Chen. I told her about the calls. She said, "Document everything, save the voicemails. Screenshot the call log. If it escalates, we file a restraining order." I saved every message. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to my grandmother's house. The key still fit. The house smelled like her. Roses and old books and the faint scent of lavender. I walked through each room. Her bedroom with a hand-sewn quilt. The kitchen where she made me tea. The porch swing where we talked about everything and nothing. I found a box under her bed. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me. She had been writing them for years. I sat on her bed and opened the first one. "Dear one, today you turned 7. Your father bought your sister a dollhouse. I bought you a book. You thank me 3 times. You have a kind heart. Don't let them dull it." I read through all of them. Each one marked a milestone, a slight, a moment she had witnessed. She had been documenting my life. Her words were a map of everything my family had tried to erase. In the last letter, dated a week before she died, she wrote, "I know I won't be here much longer, but I need you to know the truth. Your father has always resented you because you reminded him of me, the independent streak, the refusal to bend. He couldn't control me and he couldn't control you. That's the real crime, not that he loved your sister more, that he was afraid of you. Now you hold everything, the house, the money, the proof, but most importantly, you hold the truth. He can't take that from you. He can try, he will try, but you are stronger than he will ever understand. Remember who you are. Remember that I chose you." I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I locked the house and drove home. My phone buzzed again. My sister. I answered. She said, "Dad told me what you did. How could you? Grandma would have wanted us to share it." I said, "Grandma left a will. She spelled out exactly what she wanted. Read it before you talk to me." She said, "You're being selfish. You always have been." I said, "I'm hanging up now." She started to say something else, but I ended the call. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You won't get away with this." Then another. "We know where you live." Then another. "Give it back." I didn't respond. I blocked the number, but I knew that was only the beginning. My father had already started mobilizing everyone he could. He was turning my own family against me, weaponizing every relationship he had spent years cultivating. And I was alone. Or so I thought. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. A voice said, "Is this Mallory?" I said, "Who's asking?" The voice said, "My name is Diana Reyes. I was your grandmother's closest friend for 40 years. She told me to call you if anything happened. She said you might need backup." I didn't know what to say. Diana Reyes continued. "I know everything. The will, your father, the house. I was there when she wrote it. I witnessed the signing. I've been waiting for you to reach out, but I figured you'd need time." I asked, "Why didn't you come to the funeral?" She paused. "I was there. I sat in the back. I saw your father give that speech. I saw him ignore you the whole time. I stayed because I promised her I would watch over you from a distance until you were ready. Are you ready?" I said, "I think so." She said, "Good, because your father is planning to file a legal challenge tomorrow. He found a lawyer who's willing to take the case on contingency. He's betting you'll run out of money before you can defend the will." I felt the ground shift under me. I don't have money for a legal fight. She said, "You don't need it. Your grandmother set up a trust account specifically for legal defense. There's another $50,000 in there that nobody knows about, not even your father. She wanted to make sure you could fight back if it came to that." I sat in silence for a moment. My grandmother had thought of everything. Diana said, "There's more. She asked me to give you something in person. Can you meet me tomorrow at the house, 10 in the morning?" I said yes. The next morning, I drove to my grandmother's house. A car was already parked in the driveway. An older woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun sat on the porch swing. She stood when she saw me. She said, "You look like her." I said, "Everyone says that." She smiled. No, I mean you have the same look in your eyes, the look of someone who's been underestimated and is about to prove everyone wrong. She handed me a small wooden box. Open it. Inside was a key, a safe deposit box key. She said, your grandmother rented a box at the bank downtown 5 years ago. She said you'd know what to do with it. I had no idea what was in it, but I knew one thing for sure. My father had no idea what was coming. I drove straight to the bank. The safe deposit box was in the oldest part of the building, a room with marble floors and brass fixtures that smelled like old paper and dust. I slid the key into the lock. The box slid out smooth and heavy. Inside was a folder, thick, and a smaller envelope with my name on it. I opened the folder first. Inside were stock certificates, not the ones the lawyer had told me about. These were older, from before I was born. My grandmother had invested in a small technology company in the late 1980s, a company that had been bought out by a major corporation a decade later. The certificates were for 10,000 shares. After stock splits and acquisitions, they were now worth a number that made me sit down on the cold marble floor. $370,000, not in the estate, not in the trust, in a separate account that my grandmother had opened in my name when I was 6 years old. She had been adding to it every year quietly, without telling anyone. The account had never been reported to the estate because technically it was mine. She had just been the custodian. I sat in that vault room for 20 minutes trying to process the numbers. The house, the savings, the life insurance, the legal defense trust, the stocks. Altogether, my grandmother had left me nearly $750,000, and she had built it all in secret over decades, while my father assumed she had nothing but a paid-off house. I called Margaret Chen from the bank lobby. I explained what I had found. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, your grandmother was one of the most strategic people I've ever met. She knew your father would try to take everything, so she made sure the bulk of her wealth was invisible until you needed it. I asked, does he have any legal ground to stand on? She said, no, but that doesn't mean he won't try. And now I need to tell you something else. I got a call from his lawyer this morning. They're filing a petition to have the will declared invalid on grounds of undue influence. They claim you manipulated your grandmother in her final years. I felt the anger rise. That's a lie. She was sharp until the end. I have letters she wrote. I have witnesses. Margaret Chen said, I know. That's why it's unlikely to succeed. But it will drag on. He's trying to exhaust you financially and emotionally. He's betting you'll give up or settle. I said, he doesn't know about the trust. She said, no, he doesn't, and that gives us leverage. Over the next week, I learned just how far my father would go. He called my landlord and told him I was a flight risk, that I might skip out on rent. My landlord called me, confused. I explained the situation. He believed me, but the seed of doubt had been planted. He called my university alumni office, trying to get my contact information under the pretense of a family emergency. They didn't give it to him, but they called to warn me. He called my then-boyfriend, a man I had been dating for a year, and told him I was mentally unstable, that I was going through a breakdown, that I needed to be hospitalized. My boyfriend knew better, but the accusation still stung, still left a mark. And then he called my employer. I was working at a small marketing agency at the time, a job I had earned through an internship. He told my boss I was stealing from the family estate, that I was being investigated, that they should be careful about keeping me on. My boss called me into her office. She was kind. She said she didn't believe him, but she had to ask if there was any truth to it. I showed her the will. She read it, handed it back, and said, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Your job is safe. But the damage was already done. Every call, every accusation, every manipulative move was designed to isolate me, to make me feel like the whole world was turning against me, to make me desperate enough to cave. I didn't cave. I got angry. I started documenting everything. Every call, every text, every voicemail. I created a spreadsheet with dates, times, and content. I saved screenshots. I backed everything up to the cloud. I sent copies to Margaret Chen. I also started telling people, not publicly but selectively, my closest friends, my mentor at work, Diana Reyes. I stopped carrying the weight alone, and every time I told someone the truth, I felt a little stronger. The court date was set for 3 months out. My father's lawyer filed a motion for a temporary freeze on the estate. They wanted to prevent me from accessing any funds until the case was resolved. The judge granted it. I couldn't touch the house, the savings, or the stocks until the hearing. But the trust was separate, and the stocks in the safe deposit box were in my name alone. The freeze didn't touch them. I had enough to live on and enough to fight. My father didn't know that. He thought he had me trapped. He thought I was running out of money, running out of options, running out of time. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. I was at the grocery store. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end said, "Is this Mallory Hayes?" I said yes. The voice said, "My name is Angela Morrison. I'm a reporter for the Rocky Mountain Investigative Journal. I'm working on a story about contested wills and estate battles. I've been given documents that suggest your father may have attempted to forge a will before your grandmother's death. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk." I stood frozen in the produce aisle, holding a bag of oranges. I said, "How did you find me?" She said, "Your grandmother's friend, Diana Reyes, reached out to us. She provided documentation. She said you might need help telling your side of the story." I asked, "What kind of documentation?" Angela Morrison said, "She had copies of emails between your father and a document preparer asking for a will to be drafted that left everything to him, dated after your grandmother's death. We've verified the timestamps. The document was created after she passed. That's attempted fraud." I leaned against a shelf. I didn't know Diana had done that. I didn't know she had been working behind the scenes, gathering evidence, building a case not just in court, but in the court of public opinion. I said, "I'll talk, but I need to know what you're planning to publish." She said, "Fair enough. Can we meet tomorrow?" I said yes. I hung up. I stood in the grocery store for a long moment. Then I finished my shopping, paid, and drove home. That night, I called Diana. She answered on the first ring. I said, "You contacted a reporter." She said, "I did. I figured the legal system would take time and money. But the truth, if it's loud enough, moves faster. I have copies of everything. Emails, drafts, witness statements from people he tried to recruit. Your grandmother asked me to protect you. This is how I do it." I asked, "What does the reporter have?" Diana said, "Enough to make him back down, or enough to make him look very stupid if he doesn't." The next morning, I met Angela Morrison at a coffee shop downtown. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with a recorder and a notebook. She asked questions for an hour. I told her everything: the childhood, the favoritism, the bus graduation, the blackmail phone calls, the will, the safe deposit box, the letters. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen a lot of family fights over money, but this one is different. Your grandmother built an entire system to protect you. That's a story people need to hear." She asked about the 52 phone calls. I showed her my call log. She photographed it. She asked about the letters. I showed her one. She read it silently, then handed it back. She said, "We're going to run this in 2 weeks, unless your father drops his case before then. If he does, we'll hold it. If he doesn't, the story goes public." I went home feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The next day, my father's lawyer called Margaret Chen. They wanted to discuss a settlement. They wanted to know if I would consider splitting the estate to avoid litigation. My father was already feeling the pressure. He didn't know about the reporter, but he knew Diana was gathering evidence. He knew she had been making calls. He was getting nervous. Margaret Chen called me with the offer. She said, "They're offering you 40% of the estate. Your father keeps the house and 60%. You wouldn't have to fight." I said, "No." She said, "I thought you'd say that, but I needed to inform you." I said, "Tell them I'm not settling. Tell them I'll see them in court. And tell them I have evidence they haven't seen yet." 3 days later, my father showed up at my apartment again. This time he was different. He wasn't angry. He was scared. He said, "We need to talk." I said, "I'm listening." He said, "This has gone too far. I overreacted. I was hurt. I felt like your grandmother was trying to punish me. I said things I didn't mean." I said, "You called 52 times in one day. You threatened me. You called my landlord, my university, my employer. You tried to destroy my life." He looked down. I was trying to protect the family. I said, "No, you were trying to protect your control." He didn't deny it. He said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want you to drop the case. I want you to leave me alone. I want you to accept that she chose me, and there's nothing you can do about it." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "If I drop the case, will you stop the story?" I felt the floor shift, so he knew about the reporter. I said, "That depends. Are you going to leave me alone?" He said, "I'll try." I said, "That's not good enough." He left without another word. The next morning, I got a call from Margaret Chen. The judge had received a motion from my father's lawyer. They were withdrawing the challenge. The case was dismissed. The estate was mine, without condition, without negotiation. He had folded. But the story didn't stop. 2 weeks later, Angela Morrison published her article. It was titled, "The Grandmother Who Outplanned Her Son, a Will, a Fortune, and 52 Phone Calls." It included the call log, excerpts from the letters, and a detailed timeline of my father's attempts to take control. The response was immediate. Comments poured in. People shared their own stories. The article went national. A major news network picked it up. I was asked to do an interview. I declined. I didn't need the spotlight. I had what I needed. The house was mine. The money was mine. The peace was mine. But my father wasn't done. He had one last card to play, and it was the cruelest one yet. The final card my father played came 6 weeks after the article went viral. I had just finished moving into my grandmother's house. I had painted the kitchen a soft cream and planted roses along the fence line where hers used to grow. I was finally starting to breathe. Then the letter arrived. Certified mail. Return address from a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it standing in the doorway. My father had filed a motion to overturn the no contest clause. His argument was new. He claimed my grandmother had been coerced not by me, but by Diana Reyes. He claimed Diana had isolated my grandmother from her family and manipulated her into changing the will. He was painting Diana as the villain, the outsider who had turned a mother against her son. I called Diana immediately. She was calm. She said, "I expected this. He needs someone to blame. It's easier than admitting his mother chose you." She told me she had already retained her own lawyer. She said she was ready. She had known my father would come for her eventually. The court date was set for 4 months out. This time, it wasn't just my inheritance at stake. It was Diana's reputation, her freedom, everything she had built over 40 years. My father was willing to destroy anyone who stood between him and what he wanted. I spent those 4 months preparing. I reread every letter my grandmother had written. I compiled a timeline of every visit, every phone call, every interaction between Diana and my grandmother. I gathered witness statements from neighbors who had seen them gardening together, having tea on the porch, laughing in the front yard. I collected photographs spanning decades, Diana and my grandmother at holiday dinners, at birthday parties, at my high school graduation where my father hadn't bothered to show. The picture I was building was simple. Diana hadn't isolated my grandmother. She had been her dearest friend. My father had been the one who pulled away, who only called when he needed money, who visited once a year on Christmas Eve and left before the clock struck midnight. The morning of the hearing, I woke up at 5. I put on a navy blazer my grandmother would have liked. I drove to the courthouse with a box of evidence in my passenger seat. Diana was already there, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom, hands folded, expression steady. She said, "Whatever happens today, I want you to know something. Your grandmother told me once that the greatest gift she ever gave this world was you. She said it the week before she died. She made me promise to tell you if you ever doubted it." I sat down next to her. I don't doubt it anymore." The courtroom was small. My father sat on the opposite side with his lawyer. He looked older than I remembered, tired. His eyes had a hollow quality, like something inside him had already lost. The judge was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched low on her nose. She looked at the filings, then at both sides, and said, "This court has already ruled on the validity of this will. The motion before me today alleges undue influence by a third party. I will hear the evidence." My father's lawyer went first. He presented emails, but they were inconclusive. He presented witness testimony from a cousin who claimed Diana had been too involved in my grandmother's affairs. The cousin acknowledged under cross-examination that she had only visited my grandmother twice in the last decade. Then it was our turn. I took the stand first. I walked through the timeline. I showed the letters my grandmother had written me, each one dated, each one in her handwriting, each one filled with her voice. I showed the safe deposit box key. I showed the stock certificates from when I was 6 years old, proving that she had been planning this long before Diana ever entered the picture. The judge asked, "Why do you believe your grandmother chose to bypass your father?" I said, "Because she watched him for 40 years. She watched him take without giving. She watched him favor my sister and neglect me. She watched him treat love like a transaction. And she decided at the end that she had the power to make sure one person in this family was protected from him." My father's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Diana took the stand next. She was composed. She answered every question directly. She said, "I met Alina when our children were in kindergarten together. That was 43 years ago. We raised our kids together. We buried our husbands within a year of each other. We held each other through cancer scares and bad knees and the death of her sister. I was not an outsider. I was her family, chosen family." The judge asked, "Did you ever pressure her to change her will?" Diana said, "No. She told me what she planned to do. I said, 'Are you sure?' She said, 'I have never been more sure of anything in my life.' That was the full extent of my involvement." The judge asked, "Did you benefit from the will in any way?" Diana said, "No, I am not named in the will. I never asked to be. I am here because my friend asked me to watch over her granddaughter. That is my only interest." My father's lawyer tried to shake her. He asked about a loan Diana had given my grandmother 10 years earlier. She acknowledged it. She had documentary proof it was repaid in full. He asked about a vacation they had taken together. She explained they split the cost evenly. Nothing stuck. The hearing lasted 6 hours. At the end, the judge said she would take the matter under advisement and issue a ruling within 30 days. I drove home that evening exhausted but strangely peaceful. I had done everything I could. 23 days later, the ruling arrived. The judge denied my father's motion in full. She wrote that the allegations of undue influence were unsupported by credible evidence and that the original will remained valid. She also ordered my father to pay legal fees for both Diana and me, citing the motion as frivolous and filed in bad faith. It was over. Or so I thought. The final surprise came a week later. I was at the house, planting new lavender along the path to the garden when my phone rang. It was Margaret Chen. She said, "I just received a call from your father's lawyer. Your father has been admitted to the hospital. He has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He has weeks, maybe less." I sat down on the grass. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel relief. I felt something more complicated. The war was over, but the enemy was dying, and there was no satisfaction in it. Margaret Chen said, "He wants to see you." I didn't answer right away. I watched a bee land on a lavender stem and crawl into the purple flower. I said, "I'll think about it." She said, "Take your time, but I should tell you. He also asked me to draft a new will for him. He wants to leave everything to you, his house, his retirement accounts, everything." I blinked. "Why?" She said, "He didn't explain. He just said he wanted to make things right. I told him I couldn't draft it unless I was certain it was his genuine wish. He said it was." I hung up and sat in the garden for a long time. The sun moved across the sky. The shadows shifted. I thought about the bus. The Merceds, the 52 phone calls, the courtroom, the letters from my grandmother. I thought about the last time I saw my father, sitting in that courtroom hollow-eyed and defeated. I didn't know if this was guilt, or regret, or fear of what came next. But I knew one thing. My grandmother had given me the strength to stand up to him. She had also given me the choice to decide what came after. I drove to the hospital the next morning. He was in a private room on the 4th floor. He looked smaller than I remembered. The anger that had always filled him had drained away, leaving a shell. He looked at me when I walked in. He said, "You came." I sat in the chair next to his bed. "You asked." He stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he said, "I was wrong about everything." I didn't speak. He said, "I spent my whole life trying to control things. I thought if I controlled the money, I controlled the family. I thought if I controlled the narrative, I controlled how people saw me. I was wrong." I said, "Why did you want to see me?" He turned his head. His eyes were wet. "Because I don't want to die with this between us. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted to say it out loud. To someone who deserved to hear it. You deserved better. I gave you less. I'm sorry." The word landed in the room like a stone in still water. I sat with it for a moment. Then I said, "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm glad you said it." He nodded. He closed his eyes. I stayed for another hour. We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. He died 11 days later. I went to the funeral. I sat in the back. My sister sat in the front with my mother. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. The lawyer called me the next week. My father had indeed left me everything. His house, his savings, his life insurance. He had also left a letter. It was short. "Use this to help someone who grew up the way you did. Make sure they know they're not invisible. I should have done the same. I'm sorry I didn't." I folded the letter and put it in the box with my grandmother's letters. I didn't sell the house. I turned it into a small foundation, a nonprofit that provides emergency support to young adults who have been cut off by their families. No questions asked, no paperwork required, just a check and a note that says, "Someone sees you." My grandmother's house is still mine. I live there. The roses are blooming. And every time I sit on the porch swing, I feel her next to me. I think about that day in the hospital a lot, not the anger or the courtroom or the 52 unanswered calls. I think about the moment my father said the word sorry. It took him a lifetime to get there. It took losing everything and facing the end. That's the part that stays with me, not the victory, the cost. He spent decades building walls, controlling narratives, making sure everyone knew he was in charge. And in the end, the only thing left was a hospital bed and a daughter he had never learned to see. The foundation I started in his house has helped over 100 young adults now. Kids who were told they were too much, not enough, too independent to need help. Kids who had to choose between their families and their futures. Every single one of them writes back. Some send photos. Some send letters that sound like the ones my grandmother wrote to me. The pattern repeats itself unless someone breaks it. That's what my grandmother did. She broke the pattern. She didn't just leave me money. She left me a model of how to love someone without condition. She taught me that inheritance isn't just about assets. It's about what you pass forward. She passed me her stubbornness, her quiet observation, her ability to see the person everyone else overlooked. I try to pass that on to every person who walks through the foundation doors. People ask me if I ever talk to my sister. The answer is no. Some distances can't be bridged. She chose my father's path. I chose my grandmother's. We live in different worlds now. I hope she finds peace. I hope she finds the courage to ask hard questions about the stories she was told. But I don't wait for that to happen. The last thing I want to say is this. If you are sitting alone right now thinking no one sees you, no one chose you, no one left you a letter or a house or a plan, I need you to hear me. My grandmother was one person who decided to pay attention, one person who used what she had to protect someone she loved. You don't need a fortune to change someone's life. You just need to see them, to say their name, to show up. Sometimes that's enough to break a pattern that has been running for generations. So if you have someone in your life who is being treated like the background character in their own story, reach out. Send a message. Leave a note. Be the person who saw them before they had to prove they were worth seeing. My grandmother did that for me, and I promise you it changes everything. If this story reached you today, let it be the reason you choose yourself or choose someone else. Like and subscribe if you believe family isn't just blood, it's who shows up.